elite. Everybody worked to serve the king, and yet only a few select could enjoy the fruits of this labor. And what happens then? The king is so pleased by this, and his wife/sister-in-law is so conniving that the murder of a prophet happens and is paraded around and nearly celebrated. A prophet who's in jail for speaking truth to power. A prophet who's in jail for calling out the king on amoral behavior. So it's not only this is an elite party of excess and debauchery, but it's also one where power is abused and basically God's voice isn't listened to. God's voice is snuffed out. It paints a pretty stark and ugly picture of Herod, and it paints a nasty picture of what the banquet of the empire looks like. But then something interesting happens, something I've missed in my other readings of the story. John's disciples come and they take his body to bury it, which is already strange. This wouldn't have happened usually. He's a prisoner without a head. So they would have dumped his body into a mass grave, but they're given his body to give him an appropriate burial. And then they tell Jesus, and Jesus does something very strange as well. Matthew says that when Jesus heard about this, he withdrew on a boat to be by himself. But this word here that they use, withdrew, is another place where the English fails the Greek. Jesus enekourescens, which can totally be translated as withdrew. That's not a wrong translation. But it means something more closely to like flees in fear. Or it means exactly of those who through fear seek out some other place or shun sight. Jesus is scared. Jesus is scared. Do you know how much comfort I take in that? That even Jesus gets scared? I mean, I don't know about you, but I've never really thought of Jesus as being scared before. But in the moment a few weeks ago when I realized that he ran away because he was scared, I found myself loving him even more. I found myself feeling more connected to him than maybe ever before. Because Jesus heard what happened to his friend and teacher. Jesus heard about this banquet of the empire. Jesus heard about what this corrupt, amoral king was doing and probably realized that the same thing could happen to him. And he was scared. He was scared and he ran away. This Messiah, this God never seemed more human to me. Because if Jesus can get scared and want to run away, then it's okay for me to feel the same way sometimes too. But that's just one sentence in Scripture. That isn't where it ends. He doesn't stay there. He doesn't run away or hide in fear for long at all. It's just one sentence, just a heartbeat. He doesn't flee in fear for long. I mean, that would be kind of lame if he did, right? I mean, if you heard about what happened to John the Baptist and just said, forget it, I quit, and that was the end of the gospel. So what does Jesus do? Where does he go? He goes back to the wilderness. He leaves the city, the heart of the empire, the seat of power, and he returns to the wilderness. And where did John the Baptist come from? John the Baptist, we're told, comes from the wilderness. Is this a coincidence? I kind of doubt it. And so Jesus, then, by going back into the wilderness, is saying that even though John the Baptist is dead, that his voice and God's voice are not silenced. And what happens then is a different kind of banquet, a banquet of the kingdom. And it's one where it isn't just for a select few, it's for everyone who shows up. Everyone is invited. And the food isn't coming off the backs of many who labored at the top like the kingdom of the empire. In fact, it's just the opposite here. All the food comes from those at the top, the leaders, down into the hands of the many. God is invited in and blesses it, and everyone there eats until they're full. There aren't any dancing girls or murders. There isn't any dramas. There isn't any corruption or excessive consumption. People eat until they're full, and that's it, and there are leftovers. It's a totally different banquet. Amazingly simple, shockingly beautiful, and amazingly powerful. Now, yes, there are many ways to understand this banquet of the kingdom and a lot of creative ways to explain it or to try and make sense of it. Everyone saw Jesus and the disciples suit. Actual miracle. Maybe it's the foreshadowing of things to come. Maybe it's all of that. But maybe what's at its heart, maybe what the banquet of the kingdom actually is, of protest, coming from the wilderness, telling the empire that they aren't the only party in town. Telling the banquet of the empire that they aren't the only reality that exists. That somewhere, happening under their noses while they sit on their power and excess trying to silence God's voice, of happening out and run off and told they're good enough to be part of the league are invited in. Happening where the last are being put first. And the work of rebellion into a new way of being in the world. Kingdom isn't being led by some king on a throne, but by a strange carpenter from Galilee. You know, what's scary to me is that Jesus wasn't killed for his treatment and sedition and apostasy, for his political beliefs. That are political charges